Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY! A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it off. Got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, welcome in, everybody. Glad to have you on this Solar Eclipse Monday. Something special, especially if you're in our area. Appreciate you being with us here on this Monday, being back in the studio for a full week. John's back tomorrow. Looking forward to that, of course. Most importantly, we're happy to have you guys back. A loaded show today. Greg Rakestraw will be joining us in the second hour, as well as Travis Miller from Boiler Upload, Dustin Dopirak, and Todd Leary here in the first hour to join us. Plenty to talk about besides the solar eclipse, which is a big thing to talk about. You see my cool solar eclipse shirt that got from Hoosier Hanks East, actually. It doesn't say anything about Hoosier Hanks East on it, but just a cool shirt. Digging it. I don't have any solar eclipse glasses. So I've got that going for me, which is nice. Todd Leary joining us. We'll talk about tonight's Final Four. Can Purdue do what they've never done in over 100 years of basketball and win a national championship? The odds are stacked against them a little bit as they'll take on the UConn Huskies, who were set to try to win back-to-back national championships, which is something that has not happened since the mid-2000s when Florida took back-to-back titles. Different time then, but Purdue's built like they were back then, with the same team basically coming back. But UConn is the favorite in this. The two best teams probably that we've seen this year, Purdue and UConn. UConn has been the best team all season. Why it took them so long to be ranked number one was a mystery to me. But they continue to look solid. Purdue takes down North Carolina in their Cinderella story run this year. DJ Burns and that crew. Will Purdue's guards be able to come through? That has been their bugaboo for the last 2 years when it comes down to it, and we'll see. Zach Edey's been able to carry them, along with the help by Lance Jones on Saturday's game. But looking forward to talking about all of that. In addition to South Carolina knocks off Iowa and Caitlin Clark for the national championship. So congratulations to Dawn Staley and that crew as they finish the season undefeated as a national champion. They got derailed last year. Would have been back-to-back. But Iowa took care of them last year, but not the case this year. And so congratulations to them. Can women's basketball sustain this momentum that they have gained by the recent success and the recent stars like South Carolina, LSU, Iowa? You got Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark. Who's going to continue? Who carry those torches? That's part of why women's basketball has gained some notoriety and a lot more viewers is, frankly, because of the characters. The John Cena, Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark duo, all of that. It helps. It's help boosted. 14.2 million viewers watched the Iowa UConn game, a game that ended in controversy, which I've seen so many people say it was the right call. It's not about it being the right call. It wasn't egregious enough to me to make that call when Paige Beckers was literally probably a half a second away from taking a shot that could have altered the game. If she hits it, it would be been a win for UConn. So it's just, and I understand that, fouls are fouls, but that's something you could have called all game, and it just wasn't egregious enough for me for someone to make that call. But that's just me. Doesn't matter. IU football gets another commitment. LeBron Bond, a 3-star wide receiver from Norfolk, Virginia. He visited last week, and he commits to Indiana. And possibly the biggest news, though, in all of college basketball is the fact that John Calipari is leaving Kentucky and heading to Arkansas on his own terms. And while I did not expect this to happen, and I guess no one did probably, I did expect him to leave on his own terms. I'd said that last week, and I meant it. He will leave on his own terms. Like Mike Woodson will most likely leave on his own terms. Whether that means trying to get Indiana back into the tournament again next year and then leaving, but I see a similar transition with the one exception. He's not going anywhere. This has got to be his swan song. John Calipari still wants to coach. He's not done. And going to Arkansas, people have asked, well, why Arkansas? Gives him a chance to kick Kentucky's ass. There's in the SEC. So, but looking forward to talking to Todd Leary about all of this, and Dustin Dopirak as well. I didn't mention Dustin earlier coming on today. But Dustin will be with us. Don't forget Indiana Sports Beat Radio, powered by Andy Moore Honda, where you get the best in new and used vehicles. Get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com. That's all it takes. Go visit our friends, Rich and crew over there. They do an excellent job, and they will get you set up better than anybody else. And don't forget, we're also brought to you by our good friends from Free Think. Got to get their banner up. But Free Think Apparel and Promotions, where you can find whatever you need. If it's 20 or 200 T-shirts for your softball team or your company, doesn't matter. From large corporations to high school sports teams, national accounts, pro-led athletic camps, Free Think Apparel delivers. Visit freethinkapparel.com today and get printing. And they have much more than, don't think of them as a T-shirt place. They do some things they can wrap vehicles, do all kinds of big-time corporate stuff. So they've got it all. So Free Think Apparel. Support those who support Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Don't forget that. Big weekend of sports, man. Big weekend of basketball. Actually was at the Chipotle Nationals at Brownsburg. Montverde Academy, boys and girls, win another national championship. This is the seventh for Kevin Boyle and the Montverde Academy. Liam McNeely, of course, former Indiana commit on that team. Cooper Flagg, MVP of the tournament. He was the man. He had 19 points, 28 points, and then I think 18 points in those games. But he is, if you have not seen him play and seeing him play live is a different deal. You understand instantaneously why he is the number one pick in the class. He's something. Heading to Duke. Duke had 3 commitments in the championship game. 3. Think about that. In the championship game of the best high schools that there are. These are not your typical high schools. I don't know if you could really even call them high schools. They're kind of a cross between high school and JUCO somewhere. But the fact that Duke has 3 players on out there, that tells you, man, that they're still recruiting. So for the discussion of recruiting guys out of high school and guys out of the portal, there's a difference between recruiting guys out of these kind of high schools and your typical high school, unless they're someone like Jalen Harrelson or those guys, the elite of the elite. But the talent was definitely on display. Unbeknownst to me, Dusty May stopped by, and I couldn't believe that I was not aware of that. He wasn't there long, but it was a post, and then I texted him later. I'm like, damn, I can't believe I missed you at Brownsburg High School. Great facility, by the way, for this. And they're building a new field house. They already have 2 other gyms. The new field house will give them not 3, not 4, not 5, 8 gyms at Brownsburg High School. It's crazy. We've got to take a break. We've got the Todd father up next to join us to talk about it all. Looking forward to it. Brought to you by our good friends from Freethink. Like I said, go to freethinkapparel.com today and get printing on whatever your needs are, or to andymorehonda.com. Back with the Todd father right after this. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool.
Man, I'm producer and
Oh, you are? You're both?
host and janitor and everything today.
All right.
Gosh dang it. Last day that John's was gone all week last week. We didn't have shows on Thursday and Friday, and it actually worked out because after being sick for 2 weeks, I got home from the NIT semis and then really got sick.
Oh, really?
Get in bed. I had the shivers, and I'm like, what the hell? Felt like I had a fever. And then finally, though, all this crap that I'd had in my chest for 2 weeks, I finally got it out and
got rid of it. Yeah.
It was weird. But how have you been?
Good. Talked about Calipari all morning.
I know. I just basically mentioned everything that's happened. Solar eclipse, the final men's and women's Final Four. No, I've just basically
John Calipari going to Arkansas is not bigger than the Eclipse.
Well, I said it's probably the biggest news of the day, but
right, yeah, right.
I just mentioned the solar eclipse and moved on from that, but
yeah,
that's a shocker, man. But see, that cracks me up. He got them before they could get him.
Yeah,
and I said it last week before. He was going to go out on his terms. He would not allow it to be any other way.
Yeah, I just don't know that his terms were ever going to come to fruition. I mean, I'm with you. Like, I agree.
Well, they did, because he just left and got he didn't get the same money, but it's apparently the way the contract has potential bonuses that can actually exceed what he was making at $8.5 million.
Yeah.
Rough to have to make that extra few million to equal the 8.5.
Yeah, it's tough on him. I don't know how.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll have to cut back a little.
it sucks that I could live lavishly for the rest of my life on one season of that.
Yep.
How are you doing, man?
Good.
What
Not
you
much,
got?
just
What you want to talk about? Purdue, of course.
Yep.
How they have a chance, how they don't have a chance. I don't see them winning, not because they're not a decent team. I just think that Klingon and Edey, they may not be a complete wash because Edey's probably going to outscore him, but it's going to be all the ancillary parts that UConn is just superior. I mean, they've got NBA talent, and that matters. And Braden Smith has not been playing well. I mean,
yeah, he didn't on Saturday, but
he's about to get defended even more.
Yeah. How long we got?
We're ready to go.
Let's do it.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this Monday, Solar Eclipse Monday. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know whether it is either way, but Todd Leary joins us from myjumpshot.com. Don't forget, if you or anyone you know is playing basketball, if it doesn't matter if it's elementary, junior high, high school, college, or rec league, if you need to improve your jump shot, and I'm assuming that you do, you need myjumpshot.com and Todd Leary to take care of that. He's been working with some very, very high-profile people already, and definitely one of the best shooters Indiana had back in the early 90s, and that's saying something.
That sounds so long ago. My gosh.
Yeah, but every time I say it, all I can think about is that 5 of Indiana's all-time top three-point shooters, or 5 of the top 11 all-time three-point shooters, were on the same stinking roster. That's I don't think there's a school in the country that could say that. That's astonishing to me.
We weren't the most athletic team, so we had to figure out a different way to score.
Well, you certainly did, but that was incredible. And I don't mean this how it's going to sound, but it's also not great that Indiana has not had some guys move some of the guys out. And I don't mean that, you and some of the other guys weren't great. It's just you need to have the record book should continue to be challenged. It should be challenged, and it hasn't really been challenged there. And it shows how shooting has gone away for Indiana.
Well, from that regard, you are 100% right because of the way the game has changed. The game has changed into an analytical era where shooting three-pointers should become a lot more of a factor in your offense. And, Indiana, for whatever reason, has been one of the teams kind of fighting that trend and holding on to the old regime kind of longer than most other schools. But I mean, every team's going to get forced into, playing a different style, playing a little more up-tempo, shoot from the outside style before it's all over with. So yeah, those records they'll all get smashed eventually.
And that's something that the program in its current state has definitely not been a team that takes advantage of the 3-point shot, and it's hurt them. I mean, if you look at any of the successful teams in the NCAA tournament, they could all shoot the ball. It doesn't mean that they're successful every night in doing so, but you have to have the ability to be pretty good at it. And Indiana has not had that ability to be good at it.
Yeah, and it's got to be a big part of your game plan. It's got to be going into it, knowing that that's something you're trying to accomplish. And you're right. There's going to be nights that you don't shoot well. But I mean, look at it, for example, look at the teams in the Final Four, and you've got Alabama. Obviously, it's their biggest issue. UConn shoots a tremendous amount of 3-pointers. Purdue shoots a tremendous amount of 3-pointers. The one team that really
they're the number one team in the country.
Right. And the team that doesn't rely that much on 3-pointers was North Carolina State. And they're a team that kind of tries to beat you on the inside. That's why that matchup for them against Edey and Purdue was such a bad matchup for them, because their strength was also what Purdue has the best guy in the country at. And so that was a just unfortunate scenario for them. But, you give credit to Purdue and how they're built and what they are. They not only have the biggest guy on the inside, they also, we're in the top 5 in the country almost all year long in 3-point makes and or percentage. And so that's a big deal. And I mean, that's the 3-point line, outside shooting is bigger now in college basketball. It's, I saw an interview a couple years ago with an NBA guy, and his big thing with college basketball was guys are not shot makers. That's what you see, like a Trace Jackson Davis 5 years from now, he'll be a big time shot maker. And you just wonder why that can't develop more in college. And Indiana's going to have to get on board with that. It's not going to change. It's only going to, I think, become more of a big factor in college basketball.
Yeah, and there are some. There's an X factor for Indiana next year, and that is Ja'Kai Newton. We've heard about him, seen him. Don't know what he's going to add to this team. I don't know that if he's a 3-point shooter as far as volume. I know he looks like a hell of an athlete.
Yeah, no, he's. I mean, none of us know. Like I've been to practices last year. He obviously didn't practice because of the injury. He's always just been on the sideline. So honestly, I don't know. He was also one of the guys that came into Indiana not as highly recruited, so we didn't know a ton about him. I think we were all, didn't really know what to expect from him. But yeah, it's definitely an intriguing piece of what they have, and we're all excited to see what he can bring in that. But I mean, let's point out the obvious today. Like the number, if the reports are true and John Calipari does go to Arkansas, are we not all knocking on Boogie Flan's door again? Like those recruits most likely will not all stay committed to Kentucky. So watching Boogie Flan in that McDonald's All-American game, I changed my opinion of how important I think he could be. And yeah, let's go get that. Well,
there's no doubt. I mean, Indiana has to have an A-level point guard, period, without question. They have to have an A- point guard to back him up. I don't see I've people say, well, Trey Galloway, he could play it, and he did it successfully. I don't know that that's who this team needs to be the point guard, but I'm not the coach, and you've seen him practice a lot more, but I still think that they need more athleticism and guys that could beat guys off the dribble, that they could get to the rim because of beating defenders or putting defenders in a situation with their speed. I don't know that that's Trey. Trey plays very smartly and intelligently, but again, you know better than I do.
Well, I'll say it this way: like I don't think it's either get an elite point guard or bust. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but I do think it has to be one of the two things. Of your point guard either has to be the guy with the ball in his hands has to be able to score in different levels. He has to be able to score at the rim by getting by his guy, but he also has to be able to make shots. If you don't have a guy that does that, then he needs to be a true facilitator. And that's where I think a guy like Gabe Cupps could be. He could be your point guard for sure if you have him surrounded with weapons everywhere. So if you've got him with shooters on both wings and even a guy from the inside that can step out and make shots, Gabe Cupps is capable of making shots. but I think we all understand at this point in his career, he's not going to be a guy that goes out and gets you 15 to 20 points every night. And I don't know that we can consistently rely on him to score, but you can use a guy like that as a facilitator if every other person on the floor is a weapon. And it becomes that's the area Indiana doesn't have right now. So that's where we're all saying, yes, you do have to have a point guard with more athletic ability and skills and strength and speed and can get to the rim and can facilitate for other guys or create for other guys. And you know, that's what Indiana doesn't have right now. That's what we don't know. Could Ja'Kai Newton be that? I don't know. But I certainly hope we're not at the point next year of having to have Trey Galloway fill in at point guard, because although he's capable in the half court of kind of facilitating the offense, I hope that's just another option that we have, and that's not our main option, because that Indiana's not at its best when that's what it's running.
Yeah, and they have to get the players that they need. Shooting, of course, probably. I don't know if that's. I hate to call it a problem, but option.
Oh, it's a problem. It's a problem.
It was definitely a problem, but the problem solver number one is shooting, but point guard is right there. So, but you also still have to have shooting. You've got Mackenzie Mbako, who after 3/4 of the season found his groove and became the player that I think Indiana fans and a lot of us thought he was going to be right from the get-go, which was probably not fair. But he got there, and so people will expect that to start at that point and maybe even get better. But they need someone else that can do the same thing to take the focus off of him, because if he does continue to rise up, he's going to draw more attention, and they need other guys that can do the same to pull the attention away from them and basically make life troublesome for the other teams' defenses.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at being able to put someone opposite of Mbako, it makes Mbako better. It'll make Malik Reneau better. It'll make the point guard's job a lot easier. Filling that spot is a big deal. That's why the Liam McNeely thing hurt so bad. You know, I mean, can Tucker come in and be that guy? I mean, he stepped in and knocked down a 3-pointer to start the game out in the McDonald's All-American game. So, I mean, he's capable of it. I'm not sure it's necessarily his biggest strength, but I could be wrong. I haven't seen enough of him to really know. But yeah, the transfer portal needs to shore some things up for Indiana from the scoring position, and whether that's a forward or whether that's a guard. You know, they really have got to win the transfer portal battle here and come up with somebody that's big time.
Yeah, and not just that, they also have to fill in the big man spot that Kalel Ware will be vacating. I don't see that being Mackenzie or Malik Reneau. I still see him as a 4. He could play the 5, especially with the fact that he could step out. But he's going to have somebody else until he proves that he is not going to get into foul trouble.
Yeah, and agree with what you're saying, except for I think what we talked about earlier in the new analytical way of college basketball, where it's faster and shooting more from the outside. Finding a good 5-man, we got something we didn't realize how good we had when we got Kalel Ware last year. Probably not going to find another one of those guys for a while. And I don't necessarily think it's that big of a want right now, because I don't want Indiana to come down the floor and slow everything down so that they can wait on the big guy to get down the floor. And that's honestly, that's one of the differences. Edey obviously makes up for it. Edey for Purdue is a guy that you slow things down, because when he comes down the floor, he's going to get you a bucket most likely. But that's one of one. I mean, there's no one else in college basketball that I think you really do that for. And Indiana slowed their pace down last year so that they could run more half-court offense. And I don't I don't want to go back to that style of basketball. I hope that they don't get a big guy, and I hope that we do play with. Now we need some size to play on the interior and be able to defend opposing post players. But I don't want a big that, we're waiting on to get down the court so we can run half court offense and pound the ball inside. I don't think Indiana's offense is at its best. I don't think Indiana basketball is at its best when we're running an offense where we're trying to wait for two big guys to get down the floor and we have an actual 4 guy and a 5 guy. Malik can score plenty on the inside. And so I don't care about that position near as much as you're going to make everyone better if you fill the court with shooters, as opposed to trying to go win the war across the country of who's the best big guy in the portal.
Yeah, and the scary thing is when Mike Woodson made the comment that I still believe that college basketball runs through the middle. That's not what you want to hear, because that is saying that he has no intentions on changing his offense. But we'll see, because the players dictate that. Your personnel will dictate that, and if you don't have shooters, you don't have shooting. They haven't had shooting. They've had big men. They've had successful big men, but that has not served them well enough.
Last year's roster, I would 100% agree with him. I would say that team's best chance of scoring was definitely going through either your 4-man or your 5-man. And it's almost like, I kind of want to force his hand a little bit and not let him have another big guy in there, and make Malik, kind of be the guy that is, if not the biggest guy on the floor, he's playing your inside scorer position, and you don't have another one. Because when Indiana has 2 of them, they're going to play that slow down, pounded inside basketball. And I think you can see, based on what you're seeing in, this year's NCAA tournament, not just the Final Four, but the whole tournament, shooters are going to dictate who gets you to the promised land here. And, that Purdue's whole thing right now tonight, I think every analyst would agree with this. Purdue's not going to win this game by coming down the floor and pounding it into Zach Edey every single time and him having 40. They're going to win this game by the supporting cast of all of those other guys making shots and being able to make it so that they can't clog up the interior. And I think that's the strategy you'll see UConn go with tonight is, kind of guard Edey one-on-one. They've got a 7'2" guy also. So, I mean, they've got a gigantic guy also. Edey hasn't played against someone like Klingon all year long. Klingon obviously hasn't played against someone like Edey all year long. But I think you'll see them try to force the supporting cast to win the game for Purdue. And if those guys make shots, they're as good as anybody in the country. But if they don't, they're going to get exposed.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because Klingon and Edey are both big men, but they are very, very different. Klingon is a very active, somewhat like Trace Jackson Davis, but better. He's taller. He's pretty damn athletic for a 7'2" guy, and he's got a wingspan. He's an eraser. A shot will go up and all of a sudden it just disappears. But it's going to be a different task taking on Mount Edey. We'll see about that. Dustin Dopirak is going to join us next, and Todd, hope you can stick around for him. And sure. Before you take off, and we've got lots more coming up here, brought to you by myjumpshot.com. Again, for those of you, whether it's you got a kid in an elementary school, junior high, high school, and you know somebody, you're playing rec league. I know you need to improve that jump shot. Just go to myjumpshot.com and the Todd father will get it taken care of. We're back with Dustin Dopirak of the Indy Star right after this. Okie dokie. Oh, I got to bring Dustin in. What am I doing? I'm sorry, Dustin. I'm producing and juggling.
Oh, man. You got it all today. Okay.
Yeah, I'm pushing the moon today.
Oh wow, you guys got the T-shirt. You are bringing it.
That's the only thing I have. I don't have any glasses.
I don't either.
I guess I'm gonna have to make one of those fourth graders.
I do.
Pinhole things. Look
Nice.
at Todd. Yeah.
Nice. Dig it, Cole.
You know, and why I had some like 6 years ago for the last one, and I'm like, why didn't you save those? Because you don't expect another solar eclipse unless you're paying attention.
They are coming. Like people who know these things know these things.
Yeah, so unless you don't pay attention, and I didn't know that there would have been one this soon, because now with the next one through here at least is 2090.
Is that right? Wow.
It's just crazy though. It's still blowing my mind. All the attention, all of the people. I went down and visited some friends last night that are from home down in southern Indiana that are camping down in Lagodi. That's the only camping spot they could find, but it's a nice spot. I forget the name of it, but West Boggs Campground. But boy, you talk about Amish country. I got off the road a little bit, and I'm used to that from down home, but they got some high-tech buggies. I tried to take some pictures, videos, which of course, they would shun me if they saw me.
Sure.
But
yeah,
this one had more lights on it than an 18-wheeler. But my favorite one, and I need to say, I should save this for on air, but my absolute favorite one, he goes by and I just happened to look back and I had to do a double take. He had an IU sticker on the back of his buggy window.
Wow.
Oh yeah. How do you not get a picture of that?
That's
my God. I should have turned around and chased him down. But
yeah,
that first of all, how the hell are they watching IU?
they probably go. They probably take the buggy to Bloomington.
You know what? Somebody else said that, and I'm like, all right, I have never seen a buggy hitched up outside Assembly Hall, and I've never seen
nor have I. But I mean, we don't look for the buggy parking, Jim.
But but they would stand out in other ways.
You would think.
Probably the only person in there wearing a large black felt hat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, I was going to say before we go on, I don't know if we can work this in, but Todd's point right before you guys, went to break was really, really good on basically building around a big, and I think he's totally right. Todd, I think you're totally right on. They got to make Malik the 5 and go from there. And do not. It's like basically like if you have 2 bigs, you'll play 2 bigs.
Yeah, he will. That's why I want to force his hand and not. Yeah, not have
it. I think he had to because he had no better options. But Painter tried that with Williams and Harms, and he tried it a little with Williams and Edie.
Save that.
It didn't work either time. So if we can, I don't mind going into this.
Here we go. Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Solar Eclipse Monday. Thanks a lot for being with us. I hope you're ready for the eclipse. Got your glasses or your little. I'm going to have to make one of those fourth graders pinhole in a paper plate thing that you look through, whatever that deal is. Todd's got his glasses though. He showed us in the break. He's ready.
I do.
Man.
The warning on these actually says, "Do not look directly at Jim. It's bad for your eyes."
I think that goes for just about everything. They just don't have the ability to put the warning label on everything.
I'm prepared.
It's really the T-shirt. I mean, your T-shirt is hurting my eyes right now. It's just too.
I love this shirt, man.
It's too much.
I love it. The 3D glasses that you get when you go to the theater. I wonder how similar those are, or if they're just completely different.
I have no idea
because they look the same. Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star joining myself and Todd Leary right now. And before we broke, Todd was making a great point in regards to Indiana's future roster construction when with the 5 remaining open spots. Is it 5 that are remaining? I can't even remember. I think so because they've only gotten Bryson Tucker's the only signee right now. But Todd talked about building around Malik Reneau, and Dustin, you said you agree with that is what Indiana needs to do because Mike Woodson has had two bigs to go with for the last 3 years with Race Thompson, Trace Jackson Davis for the first 2 seasons, and then last year Kel'el Ware and Malik Reneau, and you can take it from there.
No, even Race you could space a little. I mean, like he obviously wasn't a particularly good shooter, but I mean he at least tried to make him, a stretch 4. And I think it's really hard when you've got 2 really good big guys not to end up playing them both. I mean, it ends up just being your best option by because you play through the year, and basically if you don't have any what you really want to have constructed around them, you will just lean into that. You'll lean into putting your best 5 guys on the floor if 2 of your best guys are bigs. And, I saw obviously a couple of years, Purdue had a similar situation where they had Travion Williams and they had Matt Harms, and then they had Travion Williams and Zach Edey. And Painter did try it on a couple occasions to play both guys. I think he definitely tried it with Harms. Like they didn't have as much depth, that year. Basically, that was the year after, the Carson Edwards Elite 8 run. And it's really hard to work in just the modern game because, you go back to Archie Miller when he had Joey Brunk and played Trace Jackson Davis, and they were still, trying to make Jackson Davis a 4, and they ended up just doing a lot of mover blocker stuff. I mean, it just ends up clogging the rim. I mean, you get enticed into it when it's your best 5 guys, and particularly, and again, in this case with Indiana, Ware and Reneau were clearly 2 of their best 5. Like it would have looked really weird if they didn't play them. And you could talk yourself into thinking, okay, well, this one guy has, really good, perimeter skills. But I mean, at this point, you really have to have a shooter at the 4. You really have to have somebody that can truly space it at the floor. And obviously Mbako is built to do that, if he ends up being the guy. And so I think that's a big thing that has to happen for Indiana. It really comes down to Mike Woodson's got to commit to a style. I mean, what he said, when he took the job is he intended to be a 4-out 1-in guy. And he's never really just fully built towards that. I mean, again, I get why he played Thompson. He at least tried to make him that kind of guy. But when Purdue's been successful, it's been with a stretch 4. I mean, they had Grady Eifert on the last Elite 8 team. And obviously Mason Gillis can do it. Kaufman Wren can play inside out. But those guys can space the floor and like Todd was saying, I mean, how many times have they put just Gillis in the corner and Edey brings 2 guys in and he just throws it back out? It's an extremely basic, action, but it works. Gillis gets a very clean look in that corner and, they get a 3 out of it. And so when you have, you really only need one guy to have the gravity that brings the defense in. You don't need 2 in this stage. And I think, again, it's the biggest thing is that Woodson's been able to recruit really good players, really good top line talent. He has been able to recruit that way, but it's been create a system around them and saying, this is going to be our style of play and you're going to recruit to this rather than I'm going to take the best guys I can get and force the system out of that. It's got to be something he dedicates to. And I think so. I just wanted to say I think that's really the crux of it, so I just wanted to give Todd credit for obviously having a great point that I think is where Indiana needs to go, is just to commit to that. And, basically that's what the game is now, is it's a spaced out game. And if you've got a really good big, the most important thing you need to do is put shooters around it.
That's why he is the Todd father. He knows what he's talking about. And Indiana has the opportunity to do whatever they want, basically, because of having these open positions. With the transfer portal, Todd, there are tons of opportunities there. It's finding the right ones. It's making sure you pick the guy that will do the things you need done and fill that role. And it's up to Indiana and their staff to find them and to land them. Yeah,
I mean, the best thing Indiana has going for it right now is – one, the NIL money.
Bags of cash.
Indiana is capable of paying what anyone else can pay. So we're not behind the 8 ball there. So that's a big benefit. The other thing is, I would play a ton on Mike Woodson is capable of developing guys to go to the NBA. And he's going to have, after Kel'el Ware goes this year, he's going to have guys that go and actually probably have a pretty immediate impact in the NBA, with Trace doing so well this year with Golden State. So, those are the selling points that I think they have. The portal is, I've actually, we're all learning every year what impact it has. And I've been a little surprised more guys haven't committed sooner than what they have. I guess everybody's waiting for the whole tournament to be over with. But, I think this next week we'll see a lot of guys immediately, attaching themselves to schools. And this is going to be a big 2-week period, I think, for Indiana.
Oh, absolutely. It's time to start landing a couple. They don't have to land them all yet because there's still going to be guys that matriculate into the portal. There are guys that have declared for the NBA draft and the portal. Who was it? I saw just latest yesterday. Someone did that. I forget. Oh, it was John L. Davis from FAU, which I expected to kind of follow Dusty May to Michigan because he's not. I don't see him being an NBA draft pick, and so he can enter the draft maybe just to go through the process. But I think he will he end up at Michigan if he's good enough to play in the Big Ten. He will probably end up at Michigan, I would think, because Dusty would be so familiar with him, and he's a solid player.
You know what, Jim, though, like I'm going to say that I'm going to bring in John Calipari situation back into this, kind of related to the John L. Davis situation. Even though two parts are great, like I think John Calipari is a good coach and Kentucky's obviously a great job. I think their time together is spent. Like I don't think it's a bad move for him to go on to somewhere else. I don't think it speaks negatively of Kentucky. I don't think it speaks negatively of John Calipari, because I think that they've run their course together. And I think they both need new scenarios to go on to. I kind of feel the same way. I watched almost every FAU game throughout this season. I think John L. Davis is an NBA talent. I think his skill set fits better probably to the NBA than it does to college basketball. But I also, I think his time with Dusty May is kind of spent. I think both of them would be better off with different scenarios next year. And that's not saying anything negative about either party. And I hope it comes across that way. I just think that after a certain amount of time together in an athletic scenario, I think these guys need a different surroundings, a new situation to accomplish. And I think those guys, I think John L. Davis will, whether it's in college or in the NBA, I do think he's got an NBA game. Again, I know Dustin will tell you the NBA is a different animal than college basketball. And I think he's got that game, but he also may go somewhere else in college and be great.
And I don't know. The other thing, too, I want to add to Todd's point. I mean, I think you are going to see a lot of fringe guys are going to declare this year because it's not viewed as a good draft. So it's basically like, this is your time. Basically, like if you're going to do it, if you think you're a maybe, if you think you're on the edge as to whether or not you're a draftable guy, this is the year you take your chance, because there are, it is not as loaded of a draft, like you're going to have you're not guaranteed to have a crack at it. But I think you're going to see a lot of guys who might not declare in other years declare this year because, that there's a possibility, because you're not, it's not as top heavy or it's not as deep. I mean, there are going to be good value players. Like, I mean, you might end up looking a couple years down the road and say, hey, this draft actually made a bigger impact than we thought it was going to. But I think there are a lot of people who are going to believe they have a shot of getting in the process than would in other years and would have last year. In particular, the guys are going to, like Trace Jackson Davis isn't the 57th pick in this year's draft. Let's put it that way. And honestly, Dustin, that's why I was more relieved than maybe I should have been that Mackenzie Mbako said he was coming back that quickly, because this is one of those drafts where maybe next year he might not get drafted till 57th, but this year he might get drafted, and he might be a late first rounder in a draft like this. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, people are going to take a chance. It's just that's just how it's viewed across the board. I think I've seen just anonymous quotes saying this is the worst draft they've ever seen. Which is wild. It's just, and I think there's going to be a lot of questions asked as to how that became the case. Because I think it's going to be one of the most like non-college heavy, drafts early on.
Right. It's loaded with guys that are from outside of the country. Either European players, Australian players, and you've got Ignite.
And the wild thing is like you have this Ignite team that barely won, and they're going to have 4 or 5 guys, that are still up there because obviously.
And I think the rest are all coming from Kentucky.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. I mean,
they've got like 7 guys on the draft board, man. 7.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously going to be a process that allows things to change. These guys are going to see some people work out and really like guys. I mean, like you do. I think you get surprised how much you can make moves, in the process, whether it's at the combine or in, individual workouts. I mean, like Ben Shepherd made himself a first-round pick between the combine and his Pacers workout. I mean, they came out of Rick Carlisle was dazzled, with how that thing went, basically, because they loved how Shepherd was all over the floor, and he's in the rotation now. He's a depth guy who plays, since Ben Mathurin got hurt and Buddy Hield got traded, he is their second, two guard, shooting guard. And so you can make it work. I mean, like it is possible. Like it always feels like it's really set because everybody knows who everybody is by the time you get into, the combine in May and then the draft workouts after that. But you can make a name for yourself if you do the right things. And so, the guys are going to have reasons to think I can make a move here. And guys will. And so like there will be players who, because like at a certain point, you're not trying to be the superstar, you're trying to show you can be a rotation guy, that you can come in, play defense, move the basketball, be unselfish, make open shots, be that guy who sort of fits in somebody's system. And so guys like that will move up. Guys like that aren't necessarily super high on the board right now will move up and be higher on the board after the combine.
Dustin, how much of a factor is I'll say a weak, college draft versus the NBA investing so much in overseas leagues and different things overseas to make them better? Like how much of a factor is that NBA influence overseas making them better versus this just being a weak college draft?
No, it's both. I mean, obviously the rise of the, overseas game, whether it's in Europe or elsewhere, is a huge piece to all of it. They've obviously got, academies everywhere now.
Right.
Benedict Mathurin, who's a guy that was NBA Latin American Academy, all those investments, are coming true. I mean, you're really rooting back. And obviously I think it goes back before this, certainly, but you think back to, the 92 Olympics is sort of that, like turning point where everybody in the world really saw this and, basically saw the dream team come over and was like, wow, like, let's be that,
Right.
And you saw the rise of just basically every, so many countries that are basketball countries, really making a turn there and developing, much, much better players. And so the NBA has invested that, created these academies, those countries have invested in themselves. I mean, obviously you still have, it is a different skill set. I was having a fun conversation with Quinn Buckner, basically because obviously he's
said no one ever.
What's that? Believe it or not, I enjoy my conversations with Quinn. I do. I'm fortunate. I really am. When it comes to Quinn, I don't know. Not everybody gets to see him in the space that I do.
Do you talk to him about Mike Woodson and the?
I did not. I would not bring up Mike Woodson.
Bingo.
Hello.
I'm smart enough not to do that. But no, he was.
That's why you enjoy your conversations with him.
Yes, but we were talking in San Antonio, and he was like. And they're like media meal room basically is in this room where there's a whole bunch of like Sports Illustrated, blow up murals of the Spurs in their championship era. And we got to talk about, like how the world was getting better and how it's hard to match just what they do, how they do so many things so well with teaching fundamentals. And I thought that was an interesting conversation of something that's been that has been just a wide conversation about trying to see what models can, that the U.S. can follow since then. So there's obviously much better players that are being developed. Again, this year there's going to be really, really good guys that come from overseas, but there's not a Wemby, for instance. There's nobody like that coming in. There's not a Luka that everybody's looking and saying, well, that guy's going to be a top, that guy's going to be a star. There are some guys that look good, but I mean, the other thing again, they certainly, invested in Ignite, and they're going to stop it. Ignite's done after this. This is the last Ignite year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they decided, because Adam Silver said at All Stars that they were going to reconsider this. And there is, so basically, I think they do view it as NIL makes it not as necessary. You know, that like,
for sure,
you know, because you're going to be able to get paid to go there, there are going to be more guys that are willing to do it. You know, again, Ignite didn't play well, you know, this year. And I think they view it as they're not trying to, you know, provide an alternative. Like they don't want to directly compete with college. You know, I think when they felt like they were providing an alternative that was, okay, there are going to be some guys who don't want anything to do with school that are going to want to get paid immediately. You know, if we're going to make guys sit out until they're 19, we have to, you know, make an option in which you get paid. You know, that's something that's required for them if they're going to stick to the 19-year-old role. You know, we have to do that. That's just the right thing to do. And now that, you know, players can get paid in college, they're like, well, we don't need that, and this isn't going particularly well, so let's move on and let the college guys get this back. And it makes sense. I mean, I think you know, when guys operate in this Ignite incubator, as much as it can work or cannot work, you know, I think it worked reasonably well with Scoot. You know, like they don't get to build the same brand. You know, like people know they exist, and you know, like they saw Scoot play against Wemby in that you know, exhibition last year. But that's all you see. I mean, nobody's watching Ignite play, you know, the Sioux Falls Skyforce or the Mad Ants or anything like that. And so it's like it makes more sense for them to let them go, you know, play in college and get the opportunity again, like you used to build the brand. And like you don't, you know, like right now the biggest brand name college player is Caitlin Clark, and it's by a long shot. I mean, who's the biggest name brand men's player right now? I mean, Edie, you know, like it's and that's a drastic difference. And I think they would not mind having guys build their brand in college again, so that they have one coming into the, you know, a bigger one coming into the NBA.
We've got to take a quick break. Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Stars with us. Todd Leary, the Todd father, is as well. And we are talking hoops, and there is a ton of it right now, even though it's all about to wrap up. Back with more in our next hour right after this. I have not hit a break right yet.
Hey, I got to go.
All right, buddy.
See you, Dustin.
Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yep.
All right, man. Tonight's the night.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry I couldn't hook up with you.
Yeah, my bad, man. Saturday was definitely a
you know, hey, it was last minute. I was like, oh God. I did get to see Chris. I stopped by Chris's.
Did you?
Gee whiz. He lives what part of town, sided like area geographically are you?
You would call it, sorry.
It's all right. Maxine's
got thoughts. You would call it the Near East side, I guess. I don't know. Like,
it's right just east of downtown, right?
Yeah, a little bit, like a couple miles east. So, like, basically,
would have been perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I had to.
Where were you at?
I started at Brownsburg.
Okay, so you're on the opposite side of town. Yeah,
but I had to go to Chris's, and he's on the complete north side.
Is he?
Yeah. Which was good. Stopped by there.
Nice.
He was remaking a fire pit. He's always doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Always doing something outside. It cracks me up. This is why him and his wife Terry, he's got her she shed out back.
I like it.
Does your wife have a she shed?
She does not have a she shed.
You have not provided a she shed?
No, I have not. You got to see my backyard. There's not. We're in discussions over building a garage and how to pull that off, because we've got an alley, and so we've got to figure out how we can do that.
Makes sense. He's got a little room, and actually he doesn't use all the room. It's, you know, shotgun room, but
yeah,
his back fence cuts across, and he said, "Oh, I've got more room." I'm like, well, why wouldn't you just fence it all in?
Yeah. Is he in Hamilton County? Or is he in, like, is he? What's up?
I don't think so. I think it's still Marion County.
Okay. I'll say Hamilton's everything north of 96th. So that's the borderline.
He is in Hamilton County.
Okay. Yeah, I figured. Yeah, that makes sense. It spaces out up there, and it's, you know, land is a little bit cheaper, but it's also a wealthier area.
You can tell that this
is he in a subdivision?
No, it's just right off of a deal there.
Dig it.
All right, we're ready to come back.
Sounds good.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Solar Eclipse Monday. Thank you so much for being with us. Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star, and we have been talking about everything Indiana with their roster construction needs. But Dustin, I haven't spoken with you yet about the biggest story in college basketball is John Calipari taking the Arkansas job, leaving Kentucky, and his quote-unquote lifetime contract behind. That frees Kentucky. They do not owe a cent to anybody. So there was $33 million that was on that they were on the hook for that, boom, is magically wiped away. Now, you want to talk about something, not that they would have had trouble anyway, but
sure,
man, they've got house money to go find a new coach.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean that it works out real nice for them. I mean, I think, Todd, what Todd said for the break was that it had run its course, and I think that's a good way to describe it. And certainly, it seemed like they had reached the point that we're like, well, like as flashy as this guy is, and he's built these teams with all these prospects, but it's just like and turned all these guys into NBA players. But, you got one title to show for it in all that time. And so, like, it's hard to win a title. It's really hard, and it's just like I get. But, like, that's why, like, Purdue and Kentucky are not the same. Like that's just kind of in terms of how they're wired. And, like, I think you basically, like, I had conversations with people last year. They were like, is Purdue ever going to move on from Matt Painter? It's like, are they ever going to do this? I'm like, I don't think so. It's like at the end of the day, like they're comfortable. And I don't think that speaks anything badly to them at all. I think it's just
it's unusual. They're a solid program. They win. They're winning every year. Well, that's not. I don't know if you could say.
I mean,
that.
they haven't had the same team success, but they're looking at. I mean, like they, in the years where they don't have a good team, it's because there's a clear rebuild. Like, like the last year that they weren't very good was immediately after the Elite Eight. And it's just, that's your standard college basketball cycle is that, like that's what it used to always be is like you built a really good team and those guys would be seniors and they would move on. And next year you'd start over and, you'd have a not great year because everybody was still figuring out who they were supposed to be and where they were supposed to fit. And then those same guys would get better and then they would get better and then they would get better. And then you'd have another Final Four shot. Because those guys, like took their lumps and figured it out. And was a college basketball cycle. And, that's college sports in general is when you get your seniors together, they're really good. And, like, that's just kind of how, Purdue was built. It wasn't that slow. But ultimately it was just a, pace thing. And every once in a while you have a bad year and you play with the house money you got from the good year you just had. I mean, like that season, I mean, the last time, the year after the Elite Eight, like they redshirted Brandon Newman and Mason Gillis. And like, I had like you hadn't heard of anybody redshirting in a while, and that's what, a thing that Matt Painter actually did with those guys. And Gillis is still there and is a key piece to, a team that's going to play for a national championship. And so like, obviously they played that style. They're just generally built that way. And it just as an institution to be cool with this, it's like, hey, we'd rather be just, consistently successful, like rather than just ride this wave in this roller coaster of, oh, well, this doesn't work. Fire that guy. Go get this guy. That doesn't work. Fire this guy. Go get that guy. It's just like they've got a guy who's, like basically whose outlook, whose general idea of how this is supposed to work, they trust. And a guy who's just sort of fits them. And it's like, okay, you like you might take some lumps, you might have an early exit, but like you just believe that, he knows what he's doing and he does. And, Kentucky is a place that expects championships. And it's like you end up riding that wave. And obviously Indiana has been in a similar scenario and, seen it not work out. And so like, but, to Todd's point, I mean, I think Calipari is a guy that also has big dreams, big ideas. And I'm sure he's not happy about the fact that he hasn't won a title, since 2012. So, he's looking for a way or a chance to do it different, a chance to start over in a place where, he doesn't feel like everybody's over his shoulder, noting how long it's been, and all that kind of thing. So it probably is a good fit. It feels odd. First off, obviously good for Arkansas for building up back up to the point that they could be a place that John Calipari could go to. Eric Musselman obviously had to do a lot to get them back there. So, that's a big deal. But yeah, I think, it's interesting, but you could definitely sense that Kentucky fans, that their patience had run out, basically, and that they were just and they were annoyed by the idea of feeling like you're supposed to be happy about producing NBA players when it doesn't lead to banners. So
yeah, they literally have 7. I was going down on one mock draft list, and I started. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Yeah. It's unprecedented. Mm-hmm. Part of it's because nobody expected Reed Shepherd to be an NBA draft pick this year, and not only is he's up there. He's a lottery pick.
Yeah, he's top 10. He might be the highest guy who goes.
So it's crazy. So but you have that and nothing to show for it. But that's been going on for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's been going on for a while, and it's been shown that unless you've got the Fab Five, you're not going to challenge for a national championship. He did it once back in 12, but he had generational guys there, and they want a chance to win.
You can't forget the 14 team entirely. Or the 15 team, 14, 15 team, you got to remember those guys. It's for as much as, they were undefeated before they got beat by Wisconsin. That team still shapes the league, how many of those guys are still big time important pros, Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker, those dudes are still matter in the league. And, they caught up, Wisconsin team that just had an answer for them. They didn't have, anybody who could guard Sam Decker, and Sam Decker, made them pay for it. But that was a really good team. That was a tremendous, tremendous basketball team, and play that tournament 100 times over, they probably win at 80 or 90. And Wisconsin was really good. I don't think you can, downplay that fact. And they were a particularly tough matchup for that Kentucky team. So they it's not like he hasn't built great teams in that past, and they've had some tournament success. But yeah, you're when you're building that much NBA talent, you're expected to get it done at some point. And I think that those groups, obviously can compete. It's a single elimination tournament. Things can just go wrong for you. You could have played this tournament, run it back next week, and maybe they have a different outcome, but you're just not guaranteed. UConn is just better built, for instance. Purdue is just better built. They've got older guys. So yeah, I think with the portal, you see something different here. I get why Calipari wants to follow it the way he follows it. I get why you want to turn out NBA players, but it is not working the same way that it used to already for him.
Who wins tonight?
UConn. And don't get me wrong. First off, a couple of things. Purdue getting here is a big deal. Purdue has reached the point that whatever happens tonight is not going to be viewed as a disaster. And so, Purdue's in the, it's weird to say you're playing a championship game with house money, but they kind of are. I think it was just get past, don't get, even getting to the Final Four, it's it would be the most Purdue thing ever to get to the Final Four and get beat by, a 10+ seed, a double-digit seed. And so winning that game, it's all right, you have got past the point where anything that happens to you can be embarrassing. And so, good for Purdue on that case. I just think Purdue's, if Edey and Klingon play to a draw, then Purdue's UConn's just a little bit better at every position. They're not physically overwhelmingly better, but I feel like you would just take, if you line them all up, you would take UConn's guys, and they just wear you down. They just find a way of getting you, no matter what you want to do to them. They just find a way of beating you. Castle was tremendous the other night, and just to try to do something to, double Klingon or whatever. I mean, they sagged off and let Castle shoot, and Castle burned them. And like Newton has just such a remarkably well-rounded game. I mean, he's such a good player. Like, Spencer is such a good playmaker, and Caravan makes shots. And I really like Hassan Diarra off the bench, and who's the other guy, Johnson. I mean, was tremendous as a backup five. I thought in that game. I mean, like, just UConn's depth but just the way the different things that those guys can do to you, like Newton's game is wild, like the guy run point, but also really, really rebound, really defend, like they got just so many really good players. And I like Purdue's guys, but I mean, they don't reliably score, is the other thing, is that those guys can have off nights, like Braden Smith having a really rough night shooting, have nights where you don't see a whole bunch of buckets from Mason Gillis or Lance Jones does. I mean, usually you get at least one of them to score, but like I think to beat UConn, you need two or three. I mean, like they've got to almost all be really good if you're going to beat UConn, because I mean, I think Edey will. I think you'll look at the end of the night and Edey's got a better stat line than Klingon. Just for the size.
And he will tonight, probably.
I think he will. Yeah, I think he'll have a better stat line tonight than Edey. But like, if Klingon plays Edey, if Klingon does 90% of what Edey does, like if I don't know, 85, 90%, in terms of scoring, rebounding, whatever. If you look at it and say at the end of the day, like Klingon was, not quite Edey, but he was close. I think that's going to be enough. Like, I just think because they're going to get more from each of their other guys.
I agree with you, brother. Great win by the Pacers last night. Before I let you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they held up. That was really key. I mean, I think they blew a 22-point lead. Were much better in the first half than they were in the second. But they really held on. I mean, I think like when you lose that big of a lead, you can feel like the bottom's falling out, and that's when you screw up at the end. And they did a good job of not doing that. I mean, I think they kind of braced themselves for the idea that like, okay, like the Heat are going to come back because they're the Heat. Like this is a team that was in the finals last year as an 8 seed. You have to believe every time that like the Heat are going to come back on you. Jimmy Butler is just, big game. Jimmy Butler is just not going to let you, run away with it. And, those shooters are going to get going, and they did. But, they held on, like made free throws down the stretch, made important passes, were ready, I think, for, a rebound basically off like when Harrow missed the free throw on purpose, to try to, get a time, and they've lost that way before. DeMar DeRozan got a bucket out of that in the Bulls game on March 13th. So they did a really good job of keeping their heads together and executing. So that was big. I think really important for them. So sets them up. They've got a game and a half lead on the Heat. They've got a game lead on the 76ers to get the tiebreakers on both teams. They only got 3 games left. So if they go 2-1, regardless of what Philly and Miami do, they're going to get the 6. And if they get the 6, they get a playoff series. They don't have to worry about the play-in. It's really, really huge for them down the stretch to put them in position that they just got to win 2 out of their last 3, and they're safe. And so that's a big, big, big deal for the Pacers.
Absolutely. Roll Pacers. Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star. Make sure you're following him to keep up with all the coverage for the Pacers as they make a run to the playoffs once again. Dustin, appreciate you, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim.
Absolutely. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends at Hoosier Hanks East. And yes, Michael, let's see. Thank you for talking about the shirt. Yeah, it is cool. I love it. And yes, Hoosier Hanks is a restaurant pub over off of College Mall Road in the old Avers pub. They have, as a matter of fact, today they've got Eclipse specials, man. Space Station middle finger bottles for $4. Elysian Space Dust IPA for $4, and the Cosmic Little Thing IPA $4 as well, in addition to Solar Flare Pepperoni Pizza, that should be Lunar, but Lunar Blanche Pizza, and their Bavarian pretzel with nacho cheese. So some Lunar specials today for the solar eclipse. But speaking of eclipse, up next, Travis Miller from Boiler Upload, and the Boilers are hoping to eclipse their previous mark of 0 national championships by adding one tonight. We'll talk to Travis when we come back right after this break. Brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. Good day.
Sir.
How are you?
I am good. Space Dust IPA, man. Are you trying to hurt people out there?
Hey, man, I'm just reading the card, bro. I'm just reading the card. So 10:04. Yeah, I'm producing today, and I hate it.
So I didn't realize you were a one-man shop today.
Oh, my gosh. It's terrible. Well, it's not. It's keeping up with the breaks. Making sure, first of all, making sure they hit them length because, John's going to have to do some editing. Tighten it up a little bit. Tighten it up. I don't think I was quite tight as I needed to be. But he'll get it figured out. He'll make it work.
I have paid so little attention to the Pacers this year. I did not realize that they could finish anywhere from 8th to 2nd right now.
Well, I'd say that realistically it's 6th to 8th.
Yeah. Well, they might pass Cleveland.
They could, but they're going to have to get on a roll, and they've been on an under roll.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what you do. You get on rolls and you go. I made a comment last week about the call in the Iowa UConn game. And I said, you know what? I said, you just can't make that call. At 3.9 seconds, you're a half a second away from Paige Beckers, probably going to put a shot up. And I'm not saying it was a wrong call, but you could make that call 50 times during a game. And if it's something like that, unless it's egregious, then I'm like, no, don't pull the trigger on that. And the fact that the Iowa defender looked like a little girl, half her size, and then you get the proverbial now with and I need to save this for the show, but every time somebody makes contact, it's contact and then, the head snap. And that drives me flipping insane. Oh, it's the new flop. It is the new flop because they crack down on flopping. So now it's the head snap. You watch now, you'll start seeing it a lot. But she did the same thing. It was boom and then a head snap, and it gets the attention of the officials.
Yeah, that's what they teach them now.
But then, like, some guy responded, okay, is it a foul in the first minute of the game? Last minute of the first quarter? 5-minute mark of the third quarter? A foul is a foul. So it's the ref's fault you didn't get your electric finish? Question mark? You didn't play sports.
Yeah, I get it.
My response is obviously, comma, you're not a bowler. Does anybody get that?
I have no idea on that one.
Oh, man. You are not a fan of the Big Lebowski, then.
I have not seen that in such a long time. I can't even remember the last time I saw it.
One of my favorite movies. Oh, that's what I should be. You're not a bowler. See, this is how I end up blowing through breaks, but that's John's problem. Oh, come on. Really? You show John Goodman, but not that. I guess I got to put obviously. Obviously, you're not a bowler. Oh, I didn't flip it. Come on, man. What? No. Boom. There it is. That's my response to that. All right. Oh, yeah, we're way late. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Solar Eclipse Monday, joined now by Travis Miller from Boiler Upload and Boiler Nation. Boiler Up, the crew is they're ready for tonight, man. This is their night, or it could be their night, depending on what happens, what goes down with the national championship game, as the Boilers take on a UConn squad that is obviously favored to win. What's the spread now? Is it like 6.5?
I think it's 6.5 to 7 points, but I just know Purdue fans are so excited. Baseball got its first road sweep of a Big Ten team in 6 years yesterday. So, I mean, that's just got everybody elated. And no, I'm kidding, of course. But yeah, it's I think they're about 6.5, 7 point underdog. And that seems about right, because I don't want to take a single thing away from this Purdue team. Obviously, it's been an incredible season. As Dustin was saying in the last segment, just getting this far to this point, everything has been validated. There is no shame in losing to a great UConn team. And I really think that UConn is the better team. Just in seeing the second semifinal on Saturday night, they just have an ability to turn it on. Their guards are incredible, and I think that's where they've got the advantage. So it's going to take a special effort tonight. And really, if Purdue, they got it done against North Carolina State, but if they have an effort like that where they have 16, 17 turnovers, Braden Smith continues to miss shots because he's had 2 poor shooting games in a row, it's going to be really, really hard for them to beat UConn. And I think that it's going to take a big Braden Smith game tonight for Purdue to win.
Yeah, not just Braden Smith. It's going to take a big night by Braden Smith, Lance Jones, and maybe somebody else. Edie's going to get his still. We talked about earlier. He's going to outstat Donovan Clingan, but Donovan Clingan can and probably will alter the game in different ways, because Edie has not played someone like Clingan. Clingan has not played someone like Edie. It's going to be interesting to see how Clingan is able to play him, and most importantly for UConn, stay out of foul trouble, because that can be an issue because Zach draws a lot of fouls. But Clingan is, I like, if you want to go back to last year, Trace Jackson Davis, a much more athletic big against him, and this guy's 7'2", but he does not have the size that Zach Edey does, and that is a major difference. But he is, man, that dude can get around. He is very mobile and athletic, but again, doesn't have the size. He's going to give up the points to Edey, I think. It'll be interesting to see what they do there. But again, it's the other talent of UConn. They've got NBA talent, and I don't know if you remember, but I pointed out a while back that the reason I said Purdue cannot and will not win the national championship is because of I ended up doing some research to answer a question for someone, and I only went back the last 5 years and found that all 5 of those teams, national championship winning teams, including last year's UConn team, had a minimum of 4 NBA draft picks on their roster. And Purdue is far from that, with having one that I would assume, Zach Edey, of course, an expected first-round draft pick. But there's nobody else that I'm thinking is an NBA draft pick on that team, at least not right now. And UConn does have those. They replaced 3 NBA draft picks with more NBA draft picks, unbelievably. And how the hell he was able to do that is crazy. That's a whole nother story. But that's the difference to me, and that will be the difference, I think, in this game.
Yeah, I think that is a big factor there. And that also shows you where coaching comes in, too. Look at what Hurley's been able to do there. Just because you have a ton of NBA talent doesn't mean you're automatically going to be a good team. I mean, look at USC. I have no idea why a school would want to hire Andy Infeld when he was loaded with 4- and 5-star guys and couldn't even have a winning record this year. So, but yeah, I do tend to agree with that. You know, if you look at Purdue's roster right now, yes, Edey is going to get drafted by somebody, but who else would? You know, Braden Smith, is somebody going to take a flyer on him in the second round in a year or two? I don't know.
Think so.
You know, can Trey Kaufman-Wren develop into something in a year or two? Maybe, you know, maybe he's one. I know people are high on Miles Colvin and his athleticism, but he's not playing a huge role right now. And as you mentioned, he's a guy that can come off the bench tonight and maybe be one of those extra contributors. So I really like what Lance Jones gave this team against NC State. Hitting those 4 threes was huge. It seemed like Lance hit a shot every time NC State was about to make a run, and that's what's going to have to happen tonight. Is they're going to need to be able to hit those shots. And I'm looking at UConn's schedule, and they only have 3 losses. They lost to Kansas back when Kansas was fully healthy, lost to them by 4. They lost to Seton Hall, your NIT champion, by 15, and they lost to Creighton by 19. So that tells me that for them to lose, they're going to have to be the ones that have an off night, and they just haven't had one here in the tournament in 2 years. 11 straight games where they've won by double digits. That's incredible in the NCAA tournament against anybody, let alone, you know, the teams that they have faced. So I do agree with you. It's going to take an incredible effort. I think UConn's going to have an off night, but I mean, stranger things have happened. You just never know. I think that Purdue, when it is playing at its maximum capability, is capable of hanging around. And, you know, you've got Zach Edey, you know, he could have a 30-point game, but it's critical to see, like you said, with Klingon might be the one player in the country that can guard him one-on-one. And if he can do that, that changes everything that you do against Purdue defensively, because you're not accounting for that double team. You're able to get out on the shooters. And if Klingon holds his own and doesn't let Edey start just going off, and Klingon also avoids foul trouble, I think that's what's going to be your big difference there, because they will be able to get out on the perimeter and find those open shooters, and Edey won't be able to pass out into the open shooter when the double comes down on him.
Yeah, it's going to be, but I still think it's going to be a great game. And we've had great finishes here. The women's, obviously, they drew record numbers for the UConn-Iowa game. The men's games have been good. Purdue pulling away and dominating an NC State team that their magical mystery tour come to an end. But they were still battling, and it was fun to watch. And UConn having, you know, they had some early trouble with, not trouble, but it was an interesting game with Alabama. They kept it very interesting until they were able to finally impose their will against UConn, or against Alabama rather. So, but these are the 2 teams we expected to see in the Final Four. It's the 2 teams that were really at the top of the polls all year long. It was either Purdue or UConn, and with UConn thought to be the best team. That's how in the hell does Danny Hurley not win Coach of the Year over Kelvin Sampson? He lost. This is the guy who won a national championship, lost 75% of his offense that did that, 3 starters to the NBA, and he's the favorite to win it again, which hasn't been done in nearly 20 years and rarely has been done. But he's going to do it again with a different team. But he's not the Coach of the Year. Get out of here. And Kelvin Sampson, I understand that, you know, you had the player that got hurt, but they were not going to win this regardless. So I'm like, and I'm not anti-Sampson. I'm not one of those. I don't give people that are all hung up on the Indiana crap. I'm like, get over that, people. But I don't think he's a great coach. Don't get me wrong. He's the best coach Indiana has hired since Bob Knight. But he did not do a better job than Danny Hurley has done. What the hell are these guys thinking? I'd like to talk to every reporter or whoever it was that voted for Sampson over Hurley and say, really? Explain that to me.
Yeah, I mean, and that has to be tough to replace most of your roster and still make a run like this. But, you know, like you said, it is a testament to the coaching. It is a testament to the talent that's out there as a head coach. That because, again, I go back to that USC example. How much talent did they have? And they couldn't even have a winning record. So you got to get the guys, and you got to get the guys in the right place. And he was able to do that. So I think he's a worthy selection. I think Matt Painter's a worthy selection because I think Painter, what he was able to do to turn this team around after that devastating loss last year and keep them focused all season long, you know, I think that deserves some consideration too. So you got in every metric tonight is the two best teams in college basketball. We don't get that very often for a title game because just the nature of a one and done tournament like this. So I'm going to enjoy it. I think it's going to be a great ball game to watch. And I'm hoping that Purdue can get everything together and get the really good Braden Smith that they had against Gonzaga and, you know, pull this off because it would be an upset, but there's no shame in losing to this UConn team.
Well, it would not be an upset to the folks in West Lafayette, but we'll certainly look forward to see what happens, and we'll all be watching, man. Make sure you go to Boiler Upload if you're a Boiler fan for all things for Purdue. Travis Miller, appreciate you, brother.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
You bet. We'll talk again. Hey, up next, Greg Rakestraw joins us, and we'll get you caught up on a lot of other things involving Indiana high school, and we'll talk more about the Final Four, get his thoughts there as well. Back with more after this, brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer, located right off of I-65 on Veterans Parkway down in Clarksville. Back with more right after this. Hey, Greg. He's not there at the moment. All right. So I think I might have missed a break. Hell, I don't even know. Hey, Greg, you there?
You got me?
Yes, sir.
Hello. Okay, buddy. Just making sure.
I'm trying to figure out if I missed a break or not. I'm producing today.
Let's play all the sponsors twice. Everybody's happy that way.
Well, I don't think that I did, but I'm like looking at the time. I'm like, all right, it doesn't make sense that I have this much time left for a final segment. I thought I had done 5. I did the open by myself. Then I had Todd.
So you got so many sponsors. That's a problem. You can't keep getting all the spots these days.
It's not that. It's just me keeping track of what I'm doing. All right, so I did open, then Todd, Dustin, then Dustin, then Travis. This should be the 6th segment. Oh, well. It's John's problem. It's John's fault that he's not here, and it'll be his problem in the edit bay. How are you doing, sir? Larry Wally Waldron, we love you, brother. Looks like you've just found us. Wherever you're watching and listening from, we appreciate you, man. How was your weekend, Greg? I lost you. If you can hear me, I cannot hear you. Yeah, I agree with you, 5. but 5 being PC. There you go. I'll get you. Add that one. Oops, nope.
Do you have me now?
There you go. You are on.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. So, and we're ready to go if you are.
I'm good.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Solar Eclipse Monday. Looking forward to that, I guess. Everybody else is so jacked about it. And I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe Greg Rakestraw joining us now. Greg, you got your Eclipse glasses?
I do not because I'm driving, but absolutely we have them at home. And what the Eclipse has turned into in this area is a national holiday. So like nobody is working today. So I get a nice Monday off after taking my son to the dentist this morning. So thank you for being flexible.
Absolutely. Anytime, anything we can do. And yeah, it's a madhouse, really. I cannot really grasp the extent. People coming from all over. All the campsites are filled. It's nuts. I'm not leaving. I'm going nowhere today, and I might even be on the golf course for the first time in 6 months during this the eclipse time. We'll see. But basketball tonight. If you still there? Oh, I think we lost Greg. He's been having a connection issue, but we'll get him back in a second. He's curious to see what he has to revert to now that the high school season has come to a conclusion. Just let us know when you're with us, Greg. I went up to Brownsburg over the weekend, and I saw him jump on there for a second. And now he's back again. How are you, brother?
I'm good, buddy. Hope you can hear me. I've been hearing you the entire time. Hope you got me.
Yes, sir. I went up to Brownsburg and watched an event that I know that you don't know anything about. It was but it happened there at the High School Nationals at Brownsburg. Dude, the amount of talent that was on the floor for the final championship game was utterly amazing. There were 12 players, 11 of them committed to D1 schools, and the only one that wasn't was IU decommit Liam McNeely. But I'm talking, Duke had 3 damn players in that game, Greg. 3.
Oh, I know the talent was fantastic. I know the folks from Brownsburg were very happy to host that.
It was a great time for them. And we're lost you again. But yeah, Brownsburg did an outstanding job. Great place, great venue. I think it will return. I talked to an official. I was talking to an official from the game itself, and they were happy with the crowds, especially for the first year. But they said crowds are bigger than when they had it in Florida and New York. And I'm like, well, that's not surprising. I said, you should have probably, you can't imagine what it would have been like had you had an IU commit in this game or someone of that ilk, because the stands would be even more filled. And Greg, if you could still hear me, just start talking when, and if I hear you, I'll let you know. But yeah, it was a great event to go to. Montverde Academy, of course, taking the hardware home. Guys going to places like LSU, Georgia with Asa Newell, Cooper Flagg to Duke. I'm trying to think. There's Robert Griffith to Baylor. Liam McNeely is uncommitted. Where will he end up? Is there still a chance that he looks at Indiana? I don't think so. I'm wondering, and I wonder if the emergence of try it again, brother. How you doing?
I got you, pal. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just talking about that game, but Liam McNeely uncommitted, and I'm like going, I wonder if there's still a shot that he looks at Indiana. But did the emergence of Mackenzie Mbako have anything to do with that decommitment? We don't know that, but I'm wondering where he'll go. Dusty May was there, made it down there.
The fact is that Liam McNeely is a great player, as you well know. You've seen him far more than I have. And so really it's going to come down to, best opportunity for playing time, but also the most money that's offered. Since this is now the unabashed capitalism era of college sports, whoever can make him the best NIL offer, combined with playing opportunity, which you can then get to the league as quickly as possible to even make more money, that's what this is coming down to, plain and simple. So if there's a chance to play major minutes at IU and get good coin in the process, he'd be unintelligent not to consider coming to Indiana University and recommitting. But if he thinks he can get similar cash, if not more, and similar playing time someplace else, then he's going to go. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that that's probably going to be Kansas, but you never know. Kansas was one that never gave up on him, I've heard, even once he committed, which I'm like, well, what does a commitment mean now? And what does a signed letter of intent mean now? I mean,
not much.
It's basically, yeah, it's not worth the paper it's written on. So it's everything is in the favor of the player. I mean, it's amazing the 180 that has happened because everything is in favor of the player, which I'm not saying that they don't deserve a lot of it, but there's a little bit too much, I think. I think they have too much autonomy because they're upending the game in a way.
But at the same time, given the flexibility that the coaches have had and the way they have moved, there's not going to be any compassion for me for college coaches now that players have a similar level of not able to make money, but similar availability to move at the drop of a hat as coaches have had for generations.
I agree. The only difference is if there was some type of, like with the NIL, they could sign them to like a 2-year requirement that you would have, that you have some kind of continuity. Coaches have contracts. These are gotten out of, but there's buyouts and this and that and the other thing. So there are different things that make it a little bit different, but it is what it is. And this is the game we're going to see. Like I mentioned, UConn playing tonight. This is the team that is playing for back-to-back national championships. Rare occurrence. Not only are they doing it, they're doing it after replacing 75% of their offense and 3 guys that went to the NBA last year.
Correct. And I was heard you talking with Travis Miller in the segment before. And again, it's been a remarkable run that Dan Hurley has put together. And UConn is clearly one of the, blue blood programs in college basketball these days. And think of the fact they have now had 3 different coaches lead them to a national championship in the last 25 years. And a point that Travis made and you made about, hey, UConn is the one team that doesn't have to immediately throw a double team at Zach Edey. I think that is such a game changer. And it's kind of the same way in the opposite direction that I felt about the NC State game on Saturday, because I thought it was such a good matchup for Purdue, because what the Burns kid was able to do for the first 4 games of the tournament, you knew he would not be able to do that against Zach Edey. And while they had kind of a second running mate in the other DJ, they didn't have a plan B in terms of making up those points that Burns couldn't give them, and they ended up scoring 50 points against Purdue. So now what Matt Painter, and I'm sure he's been thinking about this all tournament long, you never admit this publicly, but you have to be thinking a showdown with UConn is possible at some point in the championship game. I guarantee you he and somebody on that staff have been working on a UConn game plan for the last 3 weeks, because you have to change what you do. You have to have plan B ready to go if Zach Edey finding the open shooter doesn't work the way it does against everybody else. And so I'm very curious as to what plan B is going to be if Purdue has to get there at some point in time in the first or second half tonight.
I agree, sir. I agree. So what do you do now that though that part is, that's right. You go into salesman mode, and admin
a little
mode,
bit,
which admin, but I hear you. Trust me. I know I kind of follow the same path. It's like, oh yeah. People are like, oh, it's good. No, there's no time off. No time off. It doesn't stop. There's AAU stuff to follow all year long, so it doesn't quit. But the next stage for you, what is that?
Sure. So it's a mix. So I will do a lot of Indy 11 matches. In fact, I think I have 17 more that I will do between now and October, including one coming up Saturday night as Indy plays Charleston. I'm sure some of you inadvertently found the Indy 11 Lou City match on TV on Saturday as you instinctively went to CBS to watch the Final Four and realized, hey, there's soccer on. It must be someplace else, and the entire Final Four is on TBS this year. But as far as ISC is concerned, for example, we did soccer down in New Albany yesterday. New team, Southern Indiana FC. They're 2-0.
Really?
They've outscored their opponents by 11-1. So I think things are off to a good start. We also had a crew at the Hatchet House yesterday for the Southern Indiana All-Star Game, which is the HBCAA Classic. And it was great to see because a bit of a scheduling quirk. Yesterday was the top 60 workout at Marion University. And because the Indiana All-Stars probably have a few more slots open than they normally would at this time of year, kids wanted to play in that, but the Southern Indiana kids also wanted to play in the HBC All-Star Game. So Southern Indiana kids played at Marion yesterday at 1. They wrapped 3, got in a car, and was at the Hatchet House by 5:30 to play in both games. So, like, for example, Doc Nash's son, Kasem, that played for him at Boarded, played in the top 60, and then came back and played in the HBCA game, had 21 points, and was that game's MVP. Jack Benner played in the HBCA game yesterday, and so we streamed that. So if you want to go back and watch that, iscsportsnetwork.com, our Twitter feed, our YouTube, you can check that out as well. The next basketball all-star game that we'll have will be the Hoosier Gym Classic at Knightstown, which usually gets about, say, 20 of the top 30 players. You'll miss a couple because of, things like prom, or if somebody is running track and field, say in the spring. Occasionally you get a baseball kid in that group. It's kind of rare at this point. So we'll have those doubleheaders on April 27th. And then the World Series of High School Basketball is still going strong. We'll have 5 different doubleheaders over 7 days for all things Indiana versus Kentucky, ranging from June 2nd until June 8th.
That's a busy schedule, man, and a lot's going on, and we look forward to talking about that as it continues. Tonight, we've got the Final Four that we talked about a second ago, and the women's Final Four. Man, how about the numbers for these games? $14.2 million for the Iowa UConn game. I haven't seen or heard the numbers for the others, but especially the South Carolina Iowa game, I would think that would be up there as well. But
of course,
my question is, how are they going to sustain this? Because do they have the stars? You're losing Angel Reese, you're losing Caitlin Clark, generational players that have been here for a few years. And while I know that there's Paige Beckers, UConn's always have people. So it wasn't driving the train like it is now. And actually, they have 2 on the roster from Indiana.
So here's what I would say about the women's basketball, college basketball maintaining numbers. There are those that will leave because Caitlin Clark is not going to be there. And so I'll draw a couple of different Indianapolis comparisons for you, Jim. One of the men that I think is one of the smartest minds that I deal with on a regular basis is Doug Bowles, who was the president of Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And when they have been selling tickets over the course of the last 8 years, everything they have compared it to was the year before the 100th running of the race. because they drew over 350,000 for that 100th event in 2016. And they're like, listen, we're not sure if we could ever match that. What we're trying to make sure we're doing is we're beating the year before. And frankly, from 2017 until now, those numbers haven't matched 2016, but they've consistently beaten 2015, and they've continued to increase every year. And so now, from the NCAA perspective, all right, you made over $14 million to be able to watch the games because Caitlin Clark's not playing. But are you going to beat the 2023 number? Now, as it relates to Caitlin Clark, all of us in Indianapolis care about the fact that she's coming here. And it's a couple of big Mondays in Central Indiana. We have today's total Eclipse, and then we have next week's drafting of Caitlin Clark with the number 1 pick in the WNBA draft because ticket sales are literally going to the moon for the Indiana Fever at this point, knowing she's going to be playing here. And the really cool thing about this is that her season ended on April the 7th. She'll be playing for the Indiana Fever by May 14th. So there's not that 3 or 4 month wait for getting a draft pick and then that person making their debut. It's literally a 1 month wait. And Fever basketball may suddenly become the toughest ticket in town. And that's what the Indiana Pacers being a playoff team this year.
Well, they would love nothing more than to see that happen and continue to jack up the Indianapolis nightlife during the winter for that stretch. There wasn't enough basketball this year in the area, Greg. I only managed to have to go to just in this last month, last 2 weeks, to be honest with you, men's NCAA Final Four or men's NCAA tournament site, Bloomington women's NCAA tournament site, Indianapolis men's NIT championship site, Indianapolis high school state championship site, Indianapolis Chipotle Nationals high school site. So just had a little bit going on here this month of basketball, but this has been the absolute craziest of the craziest time.
Well, you know what, Jim? The thing is that it's treated like the British Empire. The old line was the sun never sets on the British Empire. The sun never sets on basketball in the state of Indiana. So, like, for example, I think the longest that I go in terms of not broadcasting basketball, I do an event called the City League Championships, which is a lot of former pros, current pros that play overseas, kind of former Division I players that are looking for someplace competitive to play. They play downtown Indianapolis over the course of 2 or 3 months every summer. They wrap that league up, like, say, the first or second Thursday in August. Usually I go from that until the end of October before I'm doing like an NAIA game or before I'm doing a Division I exhibition game. So I go about 2.5 months. That is my longest break of doing basketball. And now, because of, if you're a fan, and the Pacers are clearly trending in the right direction, and because the Fever are going to have a combination of Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, people will want to be at Gainbridge Fieldhouse 12 months a year. The only break they have to take is because this is an Olympic summer. There will be a 1 month break in the WNBA season. That's the only hoops respite fans will get in Indianapolis in 2024.
Yeah, it's crazy, but we love it. Quick question: Kentucky is looking for a new basketball coach, and I didn't get to really talk to any of my other guests today about that on potential candidates for that job because it's such a unique job, and it's coming after a big part of the coaching cycle has happened. It's kind of funny because one of the guys that Kentucky could end up with is the number one candidate that Louisville wanted in Scott Drew.
Sure. I mean, if you're Kentucky, there's no one you can't ask. You're Kentucky. You have the resources. You have the tradition. So, yes, I think you got to reach out to Scott Drew. There is a name, not here in Indianapolis. That name is Brad Stevens. Maybe you ask Brad, but I'm not sure if Brad's dream is to coach in Lexington.
He said he's a masshole.
I do think there is one guy that has to think about it, and it's Billy Donovan. And obviously, Billy has been playing in the NBA for some time, whether it's Oklahoma City, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Orlando, whatever the case may be. Given the fact that he's a former Rick Pitino assistant in Lexington, you've got to think he's had in the back of his mind, that's potentially a job I would go home for to go be at the University of Kentucky. So Scott Drew's a wonderful candidate, but you got to think a phone call's been made to Billy Donovan at this point already.
And you know what's funny? Every time there's a coaching search and I comment on it and list like, hey, this guy, and this guy. And of course, Billy Donovan's wife has been spotted looking for homes in the area. That's just, that goes with everything I always send out. Well, brother, I cannot thank you enough as always. Look forward to getting back to next week, and we'll have the NCAA, a new NCAA champion. What do you think Purdue's chances are?
I think UConn is the favorite. So obviously, for the first time in this tournament, Purdue is the underdog. But these are clearly the 1 and 2 teams in the country. The NCAA championship that I keep coming back to in the last 25 years would be Illinois and North Carolina, where you clearly had the top 2 teams in the country squaring off with each other. That one did not go the way of the Big Ten team. I'm worried about this one being the same, but it's not like UConn is so exceedingly better than Purdue is. You know, I think this is a single-digit game most of the way. So I think Purdue has got better than a puncher's chance. So let's say 55-45, 60-40 in terms of percentages. But I will be unabashedly rooting for Purdue in tonight to bring a national championship back to this state.
We'll certainly see. I don't think so. UConn is at the top of my Final Four bracket. So I'm sticking with them. I just think they're too strong. They've got too much elite talent around. It's not just Donovan Clingan. He is surrounded by NBA talent. That's something that Purdue does not have around Zach Edey. And we've seen some cracks in Braden Smith's game here in the last little bit, but we'll see if he can bounce back and get back to how he has been playing or not. But have a great rest of your day, brother. We appreciate you as always. Look forward to talking to you next week.
Thanks, Jim.
You betcha. Greg Rakestraw from the ISC Sports Network joining us, and that's going to wrap it up for us today on this solar eclipse Monday. Go out and enjoy yourself. Take care of your eyes. Remember, you can't take a picture through your phone either. You have to put the glasses in front of the phone even. But sorry I didn't get to as many comments as I'd like to today, but I'm self-producing. Man, that's just rare as an eclipse. And there's a reason for that. But cannot thank each and every one of you enough. Appreciate you guys immensely, of course. Big thanks to Greg Rakestraw, Todd Leary, the Todd father, Dustin Dopirak, and Travis Miller. Until tomorrow, we're back with more here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Until then, I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thanks for listening to